Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this ECIIA webinar. So ECIIA stands for European Confederation of Institute of Internal Auditors. For those that do not know us very well, so we are a European association that has a main activity, the lobbying of the internal audit profession and strong corporate governance towards the European regulator. The topic for today's webinar is perfectly aligned with our mission, as it is about a pioneer law in EU called DORA. DORA will be, as most of you know, very shortly applicable, as the deadline is the 17th of January 2025. DORA is a very important piece of legislation that has as a main objective to set cybersecurity, but also ICT risk management standards across the EU, with the final objective of boosting the financial sector defense against digital threats. So let me first of all thank all the speakers of today, but also all the members of the ECIIA working group that has worked on this paper, and finally the ECIIA Insurance Committee that has reviewed the paper and comments the paper. Thank you to all of you for your volunteer support to the ECIIA. Today, to guide us through the discussion about the regulation and the impact for us as internal audit, I have the pleasure to introduce the facilitator for today, who is Andrea Johan. She is the Chief Audit Executive of Uniqua, an insurance company. She is based in the beautiful city of Vienna, and she also had the great pleasure of leading this working group. Before giving the floor to you, Andrea, I would like to share some logistic details. So during the whole webinar, we are going to use Slido to get some input from you, but also to give you opportunity to raise questions, because there will be a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. For those that also want a CPE certificate, you will see at the end of the webinar that you will have the possibility to fill in a document in Slido so that your national institute can send the certificate later on. So please take your phone, take a picture of this code, or go to your PC and connect with Slido. It will be useful for the whole discussion today. So I hope you will enjoy it. And Andrea, the floor is yours.
Thank you a lot, Pascal, with pleasure. A very warm welcome as well from my side to our today's webinar on DORA and the implication on the internal audit function. And I'm very blessed by the high interest we are having today on DORA, as well as how to proceed as an internal audit function in assuring, on the one hand, to be compliant with DORA, as well as, on the other hand, to meeting all the requirements which DORA stipulates for internal audit. But first of all, I would like to introduce the speakers of today's webinar. Within the speakers round, there is Gerhard Schreihans. He is Head of IT Audit and Data Analytics at Unica Insurance. Next to him, there is Sergio Benini. He is Internal Audit Manager at Assicurazioni Generali. Then we are having within our round Salvino Marigo. He is Head of Group IT at Assicurazioni Generali, as well as Head of Internal Audit at GOSP, Generali Operations Service Platform Company, which is a company providing the infrastructure services to the main group companies. We have as well within our round Marco Bachmann. Marco Bachmann is IT Audit Director and Center of Excellence Lead at Zurich Insurance. And we are having as well Robert Stefan Sergeni, Head Audit of Operations and Technology at Zurich Insurance. Additionally, I'd like to mention two other members of our working group, which prepared and were writing the DORA paper with us together. It's Guillermo Martin Vidal. He is Corporate Director of IT and Security Audit at Mafre, and Timothy Tikhonov. He is business student at University St. Gallen. So In overall, we have here an excellent combine of knowledge within the room to discuss the DORA aspects. We all from our group, we came together a few months ago and we were elaborating if and how DORA will impact the internal audit function. And as of that time, there was no paper available, or at least no paper giving insights on internal audit and the impacts on it has on internal audit. We took the decision that we summarize our insights and impacts and to issue a DORA paper. And this DORA paper we issued for the whole internal audit community, and you find this at the ECIIA website for your download. Yeah, as of now, there are only a few days left until DORA application day. So DORA will be in place with the 17th of January, and it's the right moment to discuss the impact of DORA and be here in this round. And also, I guess, for you as the participants in this round, you have also an interest in benchmarking yourself, how you stand in comparison with the peers. So I need also to say in advance before we kick off and start that the views and opinion we are giving here in this webinar, as well as we gave in the paper, they do not necessarily reflect the official policy or the official or some use of others. It's kind of, we are giving you the information based on general information, and we are also giving you some practical insights or what we saw as also for best hints. But first of all, what is DORA about? And here I would like to ask Sergio for give us a brief overview about DORA.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Andrea. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
So wonderful. So thanks a lot. And thanks all of you for being here. Good afternoon. So I'm going to start with first preliminary and general information over the DORA. So I'm not going to boring you with the whole timeline, but I'm going to give you just a quick overview over the whole journey. So the European Commission started and launched the consultation activities on 2020 and basically drafted the regulation by the end of 2020. So more or less after 3 years, so beginning of January 2023, DORA entry into force. After 2023, we had the whole 2024, in which the European Commission worked over the so-called policy instruments that we are going to take a look to in 2 slides. And basically, as the majority of us already know, DORA is entering into force with the 17th of January 2025. Okay, so after this date, in 1 month, more or less, also sanctions could be applicable. So sanctions, the only thing that we may say is that sanctions would be applicable directly from by the local regulators, country by country. Okay, so if we go to the next slide, here another preliminary information over the 5 pillars. So basically, we may see DORA through these 5 pillars. So the first one is related to the governance and ICT risk management. So I think it's the widest pillar in terms of topics treated. Here we're talking about governance aspects, regulations, internal regulations of each financial entity, ICT, technical requirements, backup, disaster recovery, and so on. After that, we have the second pillar that is focusing over the incident management and reporting. So here, the whole incident management cycle. The third pillar is telling us something about the so-called digital operational resilience testing. Okay, that is to say, specific security assessments and activities such vulnerability assessments, penetration test, and so on. And then the fourth pillar is another very important part of DORA, because it's basically providing important requirements related to the whole third-party process management. Here we can take a look to specific contractual provisions, for example, critical ICT providers, and also it's offering some requirements referred to the oversight framework that each internal audit department of financial entities should put in place in order to take a look to the risks related to the third-party management. And then the last pillar is information sharing. So here DORA is just I would say suggesting, okay, to share information whenever you have been, for example, attacked, or you found a ICT system vulnerability and so on. So you should share such information with the other peers. Okay, DORA is formed by 64 articles in total, but some of them are not directly sharing specific requirements to be compliant with. Only 41 of them are directly sharing such requirements and are directly following within these 5 pillars. Okay, so in the next slide, we just wanted to share, to come back to the policy instruments I was talking about a few minutes ago. So basically, the policy instruments are basically documents that are kind of enhancing the level of information about the requirements that the financial entities should implement locally in order to be compliant with DORA. So DORA is the main act, but then we have these policy instruments, that is to say RTS, okay, the majority of them, ITS, guidelines, and so on. So this is a mapping that has been directly published in the European Commission website. And the only information I'm giving you with regards to this mapping is that some of these policy instruments are no longer called RTS or something like that. They become real delegated EU regulations. So whenever the evaluation process of each and every policy instrument ends, so after also the Parliament is giving its approval and so on, these documents are officially accepted, and they became official regulation at the European level. So this was just a quick overview over the main general information about DORA and policy instruments. Thanks.
Thank you, Sergio, for giving us this overview, to be briefly introduced in DORA and to be on the same page. And as the deadline is approaching, it's very helpful to have this again here. One of the very early questions we were raising when sitting together in the group in the beginning of the year was, how ready are we? Or better to say, how ready is the industry already to meet the deadline 17th of January next year? And to elaborate on this, we conducted a survey. But before we are showing you the survey results, we would like to ask you a slide or question. So the question is to you, to our audience, how ready are you as of now? So the question is, which are shared right now with you, is on the preparation of today, what is your current progress in terms of DORA implementation in your company? So there is a multiple choices answer possible, with a ranking from 1 to 5. 1 is initial stage, 5 is fully stage, and I see a lot of you already answered the question, and I see the results here upcoming. So we have the answers: risk management, incident reporting, information sharing, third-party risk, as well as resilience testing. So we have already almost 100 answers. So looking at the answers given on the readiness on DORA, Robert, is the result we are seeing right now different from the result we got from the survey? Anything surprising when doing the comparison of our survey result we did in the beginning of the year with now the answers given in the survey right now?
What we can see is there's definitely more progress. We still see quite a gap still to close, and with only 1 month left, I think that's quite some work done. From a priority perspective, we had a very similar result. So risk management was mostly advanced. Second was incident reporting. At that time, we had actually resilience testing number 3, and third-party risk management, which is a very complex topic, specifically considering all the different third parties most of the companies are using today, complex value chains in the digital space. That's probably one of the most difficult elements to handle. We did that survey actually to give, on one side, practical guidance on best practice. What does it mean to audit DORA? Most of the companies have good experience in auditing resilience on it in itself. And from that, we draw a lot of conclusions in our paper, which we also will talk later in this webinar. Over to you, Andre.
Mm-hmm. Well, then I suggest to deep dive a little bit more into the DORA regulations and in each pillars of the regulations. The first pillar is, when we look at step by step, the first pillar is the governance and ICT risk management pillar. And here we have found some direct requirement for internal audit, which is on Article 5, governance and organization. So when looking at this article, then here DORA states clearly that an ICT audit plan is needed. Sena, how to be compliant with that requirement?
So I can give you our experience in Assicurazioni Generali. So we have an audit plan, a general audit plan that includes also specific audit, so-called IT or ICT audits. So the audit plan is composed by several audits, and part of these are IT. The plan is approved by the board once a year, and then any change, any relevant change during a year is approved by the board on a continuous basis. And in any case, every 6 months, we perform a review of the audit plan. And if there are changes, the changes are approved, are taken to the attention of the board and are approved by the board. So we do not have a specific IT audit plan, but our IT audits are part of the standard audit plan in all the entities of our group, and they are clearly highlighted within the audit plan. So when we go to the risk committee or to the board, the IT audits are specifically tagged as IT audit, and they follow the standard process of all the other processes. Then, so in a very synthetic way, this is the way in which we are compliant. We were already compliant with this regulation, with this requirement.
Mm-hmm. This makes sense, and this is also what I see as common practice. So IT audits are clearly highlighted in an overall audit plan, and it's approved, or better to say acknowledged by the management board. In Article 6, so to go to the next article, Article 6 of DORA addresses the 3 lines of defense model. clearly addressing that to separate the first, the second, and the third line. So basically, this is nothing new in the financial industry, wanting clearly to see that there is a third line of defense model and the third line to be independent. But much more interesting here is that DORA's interest is that ICT risk management framework should be subject to internal audit activities on a regular basis by auditors who have sufficient knowledge, skills, and expertise and are independent, and that ICT audits should be in line with the ICT risk, plus that a proper follow-up review should be installed. So Zeno, I'm sticking at your place for this question. So maybe you can give us also here a practical hint how to meet this requirement, in particularly auditing the ICT risk management.
So first of all, we are a financial entity. So even before DORA, we have the 3 lines of defense model. So we have the second line of defense, that is risk management and compliance, at least the risk management and compliance. And then there is the third line of defense, that is internal audit. Starting from risk management and compliance, within what we call the so-called common process tree, that is the list of all the processes that are of the business processes of the company, not only direct insurance business in our case, but also supporting processes such as IT, for example. There are specific processes on IT. Then we have also a standard risk map, so risk catalog. Within the risk catalog, there are specific IT risks, and then risk management and compliance, they work on the specific IT risk and IT compliance risk, respectively, for risk management and compliance. Also, for the audit, we have within our group audit function, I'm leading the group IT audit. So we have specialized IT auditors within the group, where we take care of the analysis of the risk assessment, of the audit risk assessment, not the risk management risk assessment. Obviously, we take care of the annual risk audit risk management. So we evaluate the IT processes with respect to the IT risks that are associated, and we define the audit plan that, as I said before, includes also the specific IT audit. So on specific IT processes and on specific IT risk. So we have, with respect to the knowledge, skill, and expertise, we have specific audit specialized and specific auditors. And also with respect to the follow-up, as for the standard audit, we perform follow-up for all the issues that are issued at the end of with the issuing of the audit report. So the audit report contains the issues, and the issues are then there is a standard follow-up process where we send every month to the auditees that are owner of the issues. We send them the list of the issues they are in charge of managing, with the status and with the update, and then we perform on a continuous basis the standard follow-up, and we bring also to attention of the board both the status of the audit plan, including the IT audits, and also the status of the issues, including the IT issues. Thank you.
Sounds reasonable. So Gerhard, can you relate to Zeno? Are you acting similar, or what's your point of view on this?
Yes, I guess the approach is quite similar amongst the industry. I have just a few additions, because the second point we're also addressing the IT risk management in an own process, or IT audit universe, is structured according to ITIL 4. So there is the main area, general IT management, where IT risk management is one part of, and this is by our annual planning process risk assessed. We are defining an audit need and therefore a periodicity according to which it should be audited. But the general risk-based approach is also quite strong. With us, we have, for instance, defined standard audit items, which are audit procedures, audit checks that should be performed in each audit, so independent if IT audit or non-IT audit. And in these standard audit items, we are extracting risks from our internal GRC tool and evaluating them in course of the audit. And of course, as it is also common practice to the standard, we're having in the beginning of each audit an engagement risk assessment in which we are evaluating the inherent risks of the audited process. So it basically is not really possible to perform IT audits without looking at ICT risks that are bound to this one.
Very interesting from Seno as well as from Gerhard, listening to you and listening about how it's tackled in practice. I'd like to move forward to the next article, which is on response and recovery plans, which should be subject to internal audit reviews as well. Robert, can you tell us more about how to tackle this requirement and give us some practical hint?
Yeah, from our side, we have a history of auditing resilience response, also including recovery plans. Pre-COVID, we audited resilience overall and disaster recovery. During the pandemic, we did actually a real-time audit on the response itself, the business response towards the pandemic. And then particularly for DORA, we did auditing resilience operation. We test the preparation for DORA, and we use different approaches and methods. So we start always with understanding business impact, understanding processes, understanding the underlying IT recovery and DORA testing. For DORA test itself and for also business response testing, what we find very effective is actually sitting in the actual tests and see how they're going. So that's also a real-time auditing of the response itself, and we found that quite effective.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like those articles 5, 6, and 11, they have a lot of direct impact on internal audit. But when reading DORA in full, you also see that there are some other articles with other implication of internal audit. And that's why I'd like to go to the next slide, showing you some other requirements for internal audit. And here I'm sticking again at article number 6, where also some indirect impact for internal audit is written in the DORA Act, such as that ICT risk management framework shall be documented and reviewed at least once a year, as well as when any occurrence of an ICT-related incident. So I may ask Gerhard here, how do you interpret this indirect requirement?
Yes, we have it in our paper as an indirect requirement because in a lot of cases in the DORA regulations, when mentioning audit or auditing, this is mentioned as a kind of method and not really as a distinct activity of internal audit. So for this reason, our interpretation of this article is that the ICT risk management framework should be reviewed once a year, and this could and when major incidents occur, but this does not necessarily mean that this has to be performed by the internal audit function. However, we still think that this internal audit is very often one of the few informed sparring partners within a company. So it definitely makes sense to also get involved in this process once a year, or in case of major ICT related incidents. And our learning or our task that we were going to perform in course of the DORA implementation is to enhance this information flow. So now we know that this annual review will be performed, and now we know that a review in case of major incidents will be performed. So we want to be, as internal audit functions, in this information flow, and in order to understand activities and corrective measures that are planned after incidents or on a regular level in the ICT risk management framework.
Mm-hmm. Having a good information flow is always very valuable within the company because it's all about continuously improving on the basis of lessons learned derived from implementation and monitoring. Let me give you another indirect impact on internal audit because of DORA. Here, DORA states in Article 11 that financial entities shall regularly review their ICT business continuity policy and ICT response and recovery plans, taking into account the results of tests carried out annually by the first as well as by the second line of defense, and any recommendations by auditors and other functions. So it seems that DORA wants that we have a very good ICT business continuity plans to be them on a very, very good stage. So Sena, what's your point of view on this? What can internal audit do to have here good quality on ICT business continuity plans?
Yeah, first of all, in our group, we have a specific regulation on business continuity and disaster recovery topics. Then we have a specific business continuity and disaster recovery plans. And this is from the business point of view. From the audit point of view, on the other side, we have in our common process tree that, as I anticipated, is the list of the processes that of the company, of the business processes, of the company processes. We have a specific business continuity and disaster recovery plan. So this is part of the standard audits that we are performing since years, I would say. And so we periodically perform tests on business continuity and disaster recovery. We check the result of the business continuity and disaster recovery tests that are performed not by the audit but by the function. And we also, when we perform the audit on business continuity and disaster recovery, we have a look not only at the plans but also at the regulations, and the result of as requested by DORA, the result of our audit, if there is any kind of issue, is taken into account for the review both of the regulation and both also of the disaster recovery and business continuity plans.
That makes sense. Thank you for sharing. When looking now further to the next pillar of DORA, which is on the next slide. So the next pillar is on incident management and reporting. Here you don't see in this pillar any direct implication of DORA, but it makes sense also to elaborate a little bit on the pillar on incident management and reporting. So Marco, can you give us here some more hints and explains what this pillar is about, even though audit is not directly mentioned?
Sure, happy to do so. I believe most companies can build upon a established incident management and reporting capability. I think for us as audit teams, looking at the second pillar should specifically focus on clearly defined criteria as to when an incident becomes DORA relevant when it comes to incident management. In addition, the incident reporting to the national supervisors should be tested by the responsible first and second line teams. Auditors should look out for the ability to timely issue the various report types. There is a need for an initial report within 24 hours, an intermediate report within 72 hours, and the final report after an incident after 1 month. Hence, there's quite some indirect implication for us.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for the hint. This is very helpful to know. Let's jump down to the next pillar, which is on digital operational resilience. Here we found another article in it, which is the article number 27 on threat-led penetration tests. And this is a very interesting one to discuss about, because DORA states here that an independent assurance or an audit report should be provided for threat-led penetration tests. So Robert, I'm coming back to you. What is the internal audit obligation here on your point of view, or do we have any?
So in our government's model, managing regulatory compliance, which is also threat-led penetration testing, is first line accountability. meaning that this is performed by first line or engaged with a third party as well. But we believe from an audit perspective, our third line obligation is not only to make sure that happens, but independently test it. And for that, we're also using independent independent penetration testing companies, which helps us to understand not only the vulnerabilities, but also how the relevant operational teams react to certain attacks and incidents.
Gerhard, when listening to Robert, anything to add here from your point of view?
Generally, this topic, I think, is, as being a cybersecurity geek myself, this is one of the most interesting parts of DORA when we will see this testing. From our side, we have to organize the internal audit involvement, but certain is that there will be an internal audit involvement from our side. So we will certainly align the plans of this DLP testing, and we then also will use this information to inform also our upcoming audits. But as Robert already stated, in the lead and tracking the measures and also organizing this audit report is definitely the first line of defense. Maybe the tracking is with the second line of defense, but it's definitely no direct internal audit task. And also, as before mentioned, even if there is stated an audit report, does not necessarily mean that it has to be an internal audit report. I guess the regulation just mentions it here to say that there should be then a finalized document summarizing all the results and defining the respective measures that are upcoming.
Mm-hmm. Thanks a lot for this. So then switching to the next pillar, which is on the management of ICT third-party risk management, as well, a very interesting one. So here we found the article number 28, who says and states that exercising access, inspections, and audit rights over the ICT third-party service providers should be performed based on a risk-based approach and with a predetermined frequency of audits and inspections, and also a definition of the areas of audits to be performed or to be focused on. When reading this, it seems like that inspections and audits are wanted by the regulator in regards to ICT third-party providers. So, Seno, I'd like to ask you here if you could give us any best practice advice how to do that from audit perspective.
Yeah, first of all, it's the topic of the audit right. So it's one of the standard clauses in the contracts that we have with our infra group or also extra group service provider, the right to audit, IT or non-IT, frankly speaking. The right to audit is a standard clauses also because there are standard templates for the contractual agreement with the third-party providers, and so the right to audit is one of the standard clauses. And even before DORA, the company was having this approach, and so also from the audit point of view, we were also used to check the presence of the audit rights within the contracts, and in case it's needed, starts based on the risk assessment. In some cases, we were also using the right to audit in order to perform audit. With respect to the audit standards, okay, we are as being internal auditor, we adhere to the professional internal audit standard that have been, by the way, just updated in this year. And for the execution of audit on third parties, we are now refining our approach, also because in DORA there are several kind of activities that can be performed, or direct audit or pooled audit that maybe we'll have a look later in detail, or we can use the result of the internal audit function of the service provider or of the certifications that a service provider such as ISO or ISAE can be provided by the third-party providers. And so now we are better structuring this approach in order to have a way to collect all of this information to use as a risk assessment, because from our point of view we cannot make only reliance on certifications provided by the third-party providers or on result of the internal audit of the internal audit report of the internal audit function. We can use this for executing our risk assessment, but then if we think that the risk is too high, in some cases we need to act directly or through pooled audit, especially with respect to the big providers such as Google, Amazon, or Microsoft.
You included in your answer already also the Article 30 on the key contractual provisions as well. So it's a good overview on both topics, Article 28 and Article 30. I'd like to briefly ask Gerhard, how does this sound to you? Have you a similar or different approach? Would you like to anything add here? Maybe something what was missing or what was not?
So generally, ICT third-party service providers were always in our scope of our audit. And this risk-based approach, our interpretation of this one is based on our annual planning process. So we are assessing the risk of the process and determining the audit needs. And then we are having a look which service providers are contributing to this process. And there, with this contribution to the process, this audit need is basically inherited, where at which service providers we should have a look at. Audit standards, as Zeno mentioned, we are following, of course. For our main IT service providers, we are anyway planning on an annual basis audits. Of course, our intra-group service provider is, of course, always on the menu for our audit plan. But also for the bigger ones, and especially for the cloud service providers, these pooled audits are a considerable solution to address these topics, since for the bigger ones, AWS, Microsoft, and so on, this is the only reasonable approach also for the cloud service providers in this regard. So basically, very similar approach to the one Zeno mentioned, and I guess ICT third parties, this will be a bigger topic for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. When moving forward, then we are seeing again the overall slide with all the pillars. I will not dig deeper in the last one, information sharing, as there is no very direct impact for internal audit. Rather than this, I'd like to open a Slido question again, and Pascal, I'd like to share a question. Which is a twofold question. So the first question is, have you performed a DORA audit in 2024? And the second question is, do you plan a DORA audit in the next year? Just to give some reflection and some insights, how experienced you are already, and in elaborating further on DORA and giving further answers on this topic. So I wait a little bit for all the responses before we continuing with practical insights. Well, there's a 50-50. No, one answer is winning. It was no, we did not perform a DORA audit in 2024, but we plan to do it in 2025. So to plan in 2025, this is highly needed, as well as stated in DORA. For 2024, we had different approaches also amongst us within the group. And here on the planning regarding DORA, I'd like to ask Robert again. So can you give us any practical insights on your experience on audits performed on DORA in the last year, so meaning in the year 2024?
Yeah, for a mid-size or a larger company, we almost think that the DORA scope is too big for a single audit or even for a one audit year. So in our perspective, it almost must be a multi-year planning to cover all the relevant domains of DORA. I mean, we typically start to splitting up cyber, data, third parties. Even cyber can be subdivided further to be rather go deep in scope than too broad. That's really our experience. And then what we normally do is the whole resilience topic. We use that almost as an umbrella for DORA and look at the governance overall, resilience, business impact assessment, and use that as one theme, which we then break down in different business units.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing. I'm asking as well, Sergio. Sergio, do you have any practical experiences from the DORA audits which you would like to share?
Well, yeah, for sure. So this year we performed an audit focused on on a specific program that was held by the first line of defense. No, for sure, not from us. And this program basically embedded the requirements coming from the DORA and cascading them to all the local legal entities, trying to enabling them to work on local technical solutions and planning. And on top of that, for each and every IT audit, we are, whenever the IT process is audited, we push over the related DORA requirements linked to that process, okay? Also, what I can share is that during 2024, we basically mapped all the past audit activities, so more than 300 worldwide, for sure, carried out at group level, and we mapped them with the DORA articles in order to understand if and how we covered such contents of the DORA articles. And basically, we may say that there is a high rate of overall coverage, okay? And talking about 2025, next year, we planned a specific audit, not on the whole DORA, because from my perspective, it's quite impossible to perform a single audit focused on the whole implementation of such wide acts. But we are planning to perform this audit covering one of the main aspects, that is the whole process of management of the third parties. So this is what we have done this year and what we are going to plan for the next year.
That's a very good approach to do so. So I'm very happy that you shared this experience with us, with the audience. I'd like to show you one last question or one last overview of our survey outcome we had when we were asking about DORA readiness. So it was most importantly ranked that it's a need to enhance the cybersecurity and the preparedness, as well as the development of IT and security internal control framework. And yeah, being in the audience right now, and I'm asking for all of you the question, what if my organization is not going to be ready on time for the DORA implementation? So Marco and Zeno, do you have any recommendation for the internal audit function to do if organization is not fully ready yet? So where to focus? Marco, I'm going to ask you first.
Yeah, I think what's most important is that first and foremost, you get clarity on what is going to be fully compliant by January 17, and then also get a clear plan for what's going to come for day 2 and day 3, as in what are the late deliverables for this. From an audit perspective, as we heard earlier, right, a multi-year plan is probably the right answer, starting probably first with topics like ICT risk management, the critical important functions identification, and as well maybe the regulatory reporting. Those are likely some of the key areas the regulators will focus on initially. Subsequently, and also depending on your respective local risk assessment, have targeted audit on either operational resilience, third party, or cybersecurity, and that will then be covered on a cyclical basis.
Then, what is your advice for the internal auditors out there?
Yeah, so in case the company would not be ready for not really fully compliant, I would say, with DORA by the 17th of January 25, what I would suggest is, as also Robert said, is to clearly identify what is missing. So what are the requirements that are not fully, that the company is not fully compliant with, to have a plan, a detailed plan with a specific deadline in order to understand when the company will be compliant, and then to perform a kind of risk assessment, so an evaluation of what is the materiality of the requirements that have not been implemented yet. Are we speaking about formal topics such as update of regulation, policies, guidelines, and something like this, or are we speaking about something more relevant, such as an adequate backup of the testing in order to be sure to ensure the restore and recovery of the applications, for example, starting from the backups. So to perform this assessment and then to have an evaluation and to bring it to the attention of the corporate body, board, risk committee, depending on the management model of the company, the result of this risk assessment, and then to perform a follow-up till this the missing requirement, and so the plan is not fully achieved. This I would suggest from an audit point of view.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for the very helpful advice and hints what to do right 30 days before DORA implementation. Well, as of now, I'm sure we are having some questions in the Slido, and we are happy to take them. So looking at the very first question, so in reading it, so if you have to identify just one point, what is the most relevant change introduced by DORA? Zeno, would you like to continue?
To me, the most, because as I said, for most of the because DORA covers, I would say, the whole IT more or less, because covers cybersecurity for sure, but also change management, identity management, incident management. So a lot of different processes that are across all the IT and all the company. And so, but to me, so for some of this, there are enhanced requirements that the DORA introduces, such as the threat-led penetration test, for example, or the exit strategy to be really tested in case of change of a service provider. But these are more or less some activities that were already part of the environment of the company. To me, but this is my personal opinion, the most relevant part, what DORA stresses more, is the management of the third parties, because here there are really enhanced requirement for the management of the third parties, also towards directly towards the internal audit, because as we already mentioned, it is written that the ICT services that are supporting critical or important functions and that are provided by ICT third parties should be included in the audit plan of the financial entity. So to me, one of the most, if I have to choose one, the most important to me is the management of the ICT third parties.
Robert, you would like to continue on this?
Yeah, what I think what really is helping actually, for example, the finance industry, most of the regulation target directly, the industry. And what is really different with DORA is that it also applies to the critical ICT providers. So there's a known regulatory regime. And I think the finance industry can really profit of that regulatory coverage as well. because normally the most regulation work in making, for example, banks or insurance company responsible to manage the third party. But here, DORA is actually reaching out to the ICT providers, which I think is quite unique from a regulatory standpoint.
Yeah. Absolutely true that. Thank you for adding this. I'm turning to the next question, which is there seems to be overlaps with other legislations such as NIS and CR. How do you manage this, Gerhard?
So basically, first in the beginning, when DORA came up, I guess there was a discussion if DORA is really lex specialis for NIS. So if it's a really specific law and the financial even industry has to even look at NIS. And I think now we've learned that there are certain NIS requirements, and it definitely makes sense to have also look at those. CER, I'm not the biggest expert, but basically I think it definitely, the overlaps are huge ones, but the overlaps already existed before. Because if you look at EIOPA guidelines, if you look at EBA guidelines, a lot of those things that were stipulated there are now stipulated in DORA. So the overlaps are there. I think it definitely makes sense to have a look at these legislations, but it definitely doesn't mean that by having to consider all of those, you have 5 times the work. I guess it means that you may have to add 1, 2, 3 additional points to be fully compliant.
Thank you for answering that. Then the next one is, does internal audit reports or ISO certifications are enough to gain supplier assurance for critical or important functions? So, Seno, please.
Sorry, I was in mute. Oh, I can try. In my point of view, they would be not enough. So I expect that the regulators that we can use as internal audit such a report or ISO certification as an input for our risk assessment. So in order to prioritize eventually the third party that are supporting the critical important functions, okay? And in order to understand to prioritize the third parties that we need to audit. But in my point of view, in my opinion, I would expect that the regulator would request internal audit to perform direct audit on third party providers supporting critical and important functions, obviously, in case the risk assessment performed internally demonstrated that there is a high residual risk. Mm-hmm. This is my point. I hope to be not correct because this would be much more easier for us, so not to go directly on the third party, but I expect that this would be not sufficient. So to rely only on certification and audit reports.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. The next question is a related one. Which assurance do you think can we expect from direct ISO oversight of CTPP critical third-party providers, which will likely include the big cloud providers? So, Gerhard, I'd like to ask you to answer on this.
I tried as well. From my perspective, I will answer it very politically. I guess it is good to have now a strong partner by covering this big cloud service provider, because I guess for financial institutions on a singular level, it's very hard to address them and to get those big players to move. And I think with having our colleagues on the supervisor authority on our side, it's a good thing, because we're pushing all in the same direction and have similar interests.
Thanks a lot. So looking at the time, as we have 2 minutes left, I'd like to give you one last hint, as we cannot answer all the questions which are left. But the last hint is our DORA paper, which we wrote together, is available on the ECIAA website, which you can download. And it includes as well a DORA audit program, which is very helpful in case, and of course you do in the next year when auditing DORA. So there's a lot of food for thought. And with this having said, I wish you a very, very successful next year and all the best with auditing DORA. So thank you a lot for taking your time and attending this webinar. So thanks a lot in the name of all of the speakers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank everybody.
Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.